Hi everyone. My name is Katie. I'm an event host here at Bank Square Books and Savoy Bookshop and Café. We are so delighted that you're able to tune in to this evening's virtual event. Just a few pieces of business before we begin. We'd like to call attention to the few helpful features of Crowdcast. There's a chat window on the right-hand side of your screen so you can interact virtually during the event. If you participate in the chat, we ask that you please be kind. You can also ask questions for our author by submitting them through the Ask a Question button. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can during the event, which will run for about an hour. If you have trouble with the stream, there's a question mark on the top right-hand corner, and that will help you troubleshoot any issues you might be experiencing. If you'd like to purchase a book, you can do so through the green button below the video stream. This will take you to our website where you can complete your purchase. Books ordered through the link from tonight's event will come with signed book plates, and the first 5 people to purchase a book will get a fun notebook from Claire. Please note that it may take a few extra days to fulfill your orders. We'll get them shipped out and made available for pickup as soon as we can. I'm delighted to introduce Claire Nicogossian tonight to discuss Mama, You Are Enough. Dr. Claire Nicogossian is a licensed clinical psychologist and a clinical instructor of psychiatry and human behavior at Brown University. She is the founder of momswellbeing.com and lives in Rhode Island with her husband and 4 daughters. Claire will speak about her book for about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up to your questions that have been submitted through the question button. And now I'll turn it over to Claire for her to discuss her book.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a nice introduction, Katie. Thank you so much. So welcome. I'm so happy that this book is finally out in the world. It is a true labor of love, and to be able to meet with you guys tonight and share a little more about this book is really exciting. So if you have any questions, please send them on. I know I've been receiving a lot of questions from people who are very interested in the book, so I'm happy to answer any of those. And I guess, Katie, you were going to start with asking me some questions, so we can either wait for a couple more people to come in or go ahead and start.
Yeah, I have a few questions here. Let me pull them up. I think I got one from social media here. What inspired you to write Mama, You Are Enough?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I'm a mom, so there were a lot of things that inspired me. The first thing is being a mother. I think to be a mother, it's such a opportunity to grow and just experience so many emotions. And I didn't feel prepared for that, even though I have 2 advanced degrees, a master's and a doctorate. So that really inspired me as well. I saw this gap, out there, that there's a lot of information on, how to take care of your baby, how to adjust to pregnancy, what to do when you welcome a new baby into your home. But there's not a lot of information what to do after they're a couple years old. So everything is really focused on either discipline or child development, and not a lot is focused on moms and dads. So I was really interested in kind of filling the gap in the space that I saw, because I really felt and experienced myself, with all that education I had and all that experience in the therapy room, that I was experiencing these emotions that nobody would really talk about. And so sometimes those would be emotions that felt a little taboo in motherhood. Like, how do we handle sadness? How do we handle anger? How do we handle when we're worried or afraid, or really irritable and frustrated and just disappointed, either in ourselves, our children, our partner. And so all of that really inspired writing Mama, You Are Enough. So it's really a book about many different things, from the therapy room, my own experience as a mother, and just really filling a gap about taking care of maternal mental health.
Yeah. I was also wondering, I know you're a teacher as well. Do you see does teaching at all assist you in writing when you're writing about different topics, and kind of like being around students? Does that kind of change how you see things?
It does. It really does. One of the things that in graduate school, we were finishing, when I was finishing my clinical psychology doctorate. So you do all your coursework for 3 years, and then you go into intensive training and almost like a residency and internship. And in our last class, before we go and do these intensive on-site trainings, one of the professors said, listen, when you get this degree, you're not done learning. It's really just beginning. And that really made such an impact on me. So I consider myself someone who is a lifelong learner, that I may have expertise in these areas, but I have this natural curiosity about people's stories and my own experience. And teaching, at Brown is really exciting because I'm working with psychiatrists and triple boarders in their last, formative years of training. And so the physicians and doctors are trained so differently than psychologists, and it's very complementary. So it really helps me to see the world a whole new way. And the other part that I think, when people think of therapy, they think of just talking out your problems. But a lot of what I do in my role is I talk about, teach people about psychological concepts, research, what we know about health and well-being, how to take care of yourself, what's the right amount of caffeine to have, what's too much alcohol to have, how family history may impact what's going on in your mental health, how your thoughts and behaviors impact how you're feeling. So, I see my role, as a therapist and psychologist, also as a natural teacher. And then as a mom, I'm teaching all the time and helping these little daughters of mine to kind of launch into the world. So I definitely find a lot of inspiration from all those different areas, for sure.
Yeah, I was wondering that too, like as your experience as a parent, do you talk to your children about what you've written, or how does that affect your writing a lot, I would imagine?
Yeah, it does, Katie. One of the things that is so ingrained in me as a psychologist, and that carries over into motherhood, is that anything that I talk about with clients in the therapy room is confidential, and it's their story. So, I always want clients that I work with, and I've been doing this now for 20 some years in some capacity. I want them to feel like that is the most sacred, safe space where they can be themselves, say what they need to say, get support, and leave feeling like they've got some things to work on and some tools and skills. And I would never write about a client, and I would never write about my kids without their consent either. So that kind of is kind of one of my core philosophies, that if I write, there's a lot of inspiration, but I always write from my point of view, because I don't want my daughters to ever feel like I was taking something of theirs and making it mine.
Yeah.
So I'm very mindful to have that boundary, that not to write about them from my point of view, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the book, there's a couple of examples of, fictionalized mothers and some of their struggles. And, again, I kind of did a compilation of experiences, and themes, because I don't want anyone to ever feel like they read my work and think, oh my gosh, that's me. Because that's not, that for me would feel like a violation, whether it be with a client or a family member or my daughters or my husband. So we're friends. Yeah.
Going back to the title of the book, how did you determine the title? What does it mean to you? And I know shadow emotions, how are they relating to thriving in motherhood?
Right. No, thank you for that's a great question. So it's interesting. So anyone who's listening who's a writer or knows a writer, when you publish your book, like I've done through a publishing house, Page Street Publishing, it's distributed by Macmillan, you really don't have a lot of say in some things about the book. And what I loved about working with the editors and the team at Page Street is we really worked to find a title that felt like it connected for everyone. So I may be the expert of what concepts I want in the book, but they're really wonderful at design and determining what the market will respond to. So it was a real collaboration that we came through, and it was an inspiration. Mama, You Are Enough a lot of moms are question themselves, and I see this in the therapy room. I see this on social media. I see this on parenting articles, that mothers are always saying, am I doing a good enough job? How am I doing? Am I failing? I feel so guilty. And I really wanted to kind of change the narrative and say, wait, let's start like from the concept of a circle, right? Everything is whole. You're already enough. You're already exactly the mother your children need you to be. And if there are places where you're not feeling good, this is the book that's going to help you to kind of move past that. So for me, I feel like already my core philosophy is that I think mothers judge themselves way too harshly. And so it's just a little reminder that you're already enough, and let's just breathe into that. And then we can kind of work into some more problem solving details. The part about the shadow emotion. So again, I'm very mindful about the words I use. And it's funny, I say to my husband, I'm like, and my daughters, I'm like, between being a writer and a psychologist, words are so important. And sometimes that can be a blessing and strength, and other times it can be annoying, I guess. But I intentionally wanted to kind of create a new phrase, because in cognitive behavioral theory and therapy, which is a lot of like what we do in terms of how we treat certain depression, anxiety, it's very empirically based, research based, information. That's what a lot of therapists do, and I practice from that model as well. But I also practice from other interdisciplinaries, and in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a lot of emphasis on negative emotions or negative experiences or negative thoughts. And I wanted to create something that didn't feel judgmental. So I came up with this concept influenced by Carl Jung, a psychiatrist who talked about our shadow side, and kind of created this concept of the shadow emotion, which is really the emotions that we don't talk about in motherhood, that we feel shame or guilt or uncertainty or insecurity feeling, but we're all experiencing. And so I felt like we can embrace shadow different than negative, right? It just feels different. Like if we say, oh, that's a shadow emotion, then I'm kind of curious, like what's going on, versus, oh, that's a negative emotion. And we immediately distance. And so that was a lot of the inspiration. And a lot of what I see in the work that I do with clients is that if we can just take the shadow emotions, and so broadly speaking, that's sadness, anger, fear, and worry, disgust, embarrassment, shame. And if we can put that out there and say, okay, let's look at how these emotions show up in your life, then we can kind of take care of ourselves and like hold those emotions and figure out what to do with them. So I just like the way it sounds. I feel like there's a lot of hidden parts of motherhood that need to get out there, and we need to talk about it. And I believe once we start talking about it, that's the path to thriving. And there's a great concept, and it's not mine, it's from a woman named Debbie Ford, who wrote about some shadow work as well years ago. And she had this great analogy that the things that we don't deal with, the shadow parts of ourselves, it's like holding a beach ball in a pool and putting our hands on it. And you can't hold it long. It's going to come out and pop out the other way. And so I love that visual, that's exactly what I believe, is that if we don't embrace our shadow emotions, they're going to pop out in other ways. So if we're upset at something, it's going to come out whether on ourselves, our friends, our partner, our child. So that's kind of the concept behind that.
What could readers expect picking up this book, and how did you decide on the overall structure of it?
Yeah, so that a lot of thought went into that, and as a mom of 4 daughters, so for those attending tonight, my daughters, I have twins that are 17, a 12-year-old, and a newly turned 10-year-old. And so, and I work and teach, and it's a lot. It's a lot and I wouldn't change any part of my life, but especially right now during COVID, it's really amped up. But I wanted to create a book that mothers could pick up right away and get some inspiration and symptom relief and figure out what they could do to take care of themselves. So the book initially, it kind of, the first couple chapters is just general information, as if you and I were sitting here having a conversation. I would be telling you about self-care and well-being and what you needed to do to kind of create a foundation that allows you to thrive. And then I talk about some other concepts related to cognitive behavioral therapy and some of the things that I talk about with my clients in terms of our emotions and feelings and thoughts and behaviors and how that all impacts what we do and how we respond. And it all has a lens through motherhood. And then I go into, just talking about emotions, like how are we going to manage the emotions? And so once you read like maybe the first 20, 30 pages, you can then pick up any chapter that you're feeling. So if you're feeling a certain emotion, all you have to do is go to that section and read about it. And that's usually 10 pages or less. So in the book, I have these great diagrams and, that you can download for free. Even if you don't purchase the book, I really believe so strongly in sharing information and supporting moms. So, what you do first, is my goal is that there's a little, let's see, where is this? Okay, so there's a little, it's going to be backwards, but if you go to momswellbeing.com and you go to the book menu bar, scroll all the way down, and you can get these beautiful PDFs. There's 6 of them. 3 are filled in. They're the same diagrams. They're in the book, and then they're blank ones that you can use on your own, kind of go along and help yourself with your emotions. So the first ones, it's going to be backwards, but you get the concept. It's the wheel, the self-care wheel in motherhood. And these are some of the ways you can map out, like, how are you taking care of yourself, your physical health, your emotional health, your personal self, not related to role or children, like your hobbies and interests, your relationships, your spiritual health, which is all about connection, what brings you peace and joy. And then you can download both of these, and you can fill in and see in a given week what you're going through and where you need to strengthen. So the book takes you through those first couple chapters, how to do that. The part that I really love is, and I've been encouraging clients that I work with and people who've asked me to use this second part with your emotions. So it's another, wheel of, and it's called the Mother Mood Wheel of Emotions. And it divides all of these emotions, the shadow emotions that I just mentioned: anger, sadness, fear and worry, disgust, embarrassment, shame. And I also put joy in there because I think that's important. I think that joy is something that we actively have to put in our life. It doesn't just find us. We have to make time for that through activities we love. So what I've said to some moms is, just for the week, notice where your emotions are. Notice what are you feeling? Are you feeling more angry? Are you feeling more irritable? Are you feeling more sad? Are you feeling tearful or irritable? And then what you can do is just go to that section of the book and read about that emotion and read about that feeling, that shadow emotion. And there's going to be a bunch of different things you can do to get through that, all through the lens of motherhood. And so some of that's working on your thoughts, some of that's changing some of your behavior. I also have like little meditations in there. They're called the Thriving Mama Reflection. So it really takes you through and allows you to work through what you're feeling and how to move past it.
Yeah, definitely. I know journaling is often a recommended resource to help you. In terms of the writing process, was there anything surprising or challenging while you were writing?
Oh, that's a good question. So what was really interesting about the writing process is, one, I don't think I realized how demanding the editing process is for writing a book. And so I really was surprised that it's very time consuming. But I enjoyed a lot of that working with my editor, Sarah. But what surprised me is when I had to go and sit and talk about some of these emotions in my head, or think about if I'm sitting across from a mom and she was feeling this, what would I want her to know? And it was almost like getting into character for me. And it surprised me a little bit. Like when I was writing the section on sadness, which, starts out with mild symptoms. It starts out with tearfulness. Every mom feels tearful at some point for a variety of reasons. And then it goes through feeling insecure, or feeling more sad, or feeling lonely, feeling alone in your experiences, as well as, feeling kind of helpless and ineffective. And as I got further down the continuum of those emotions, shadow emotions, I was like in character feeling it. So there were a lot of times I would have to go take a bath or go for a walk, or just remind myself that I don't feel sad, but I've just sat with sadness for hours. And it was, that surprised me. It was hard to shake sometimes.
Yeah,
Really.
definitely.
Yeah. So I hope, and I think that from the feedback I've heard is it comes across as a very authentic experience for the reader, that it really feels like and that feels like a huge victory and a huge success, that I was able to translate those emotions to paper, that a mom and a reader could read that and say, oh my gosh, she gets me. I'm not alone. And that is so important in my writing.
Is there any part of the book that was a favorite part for you to write, that you really enjoyed
I
during the
think,
process?
yeah, my favorite part was the thriving mama reflections. So, for example, like if we're talking about feeling insecure, and a lot of moms feel insecure, whether it's about how they look, how they're comparing themselves to other moms. Are they doing the right thing? Are their children okay? There's a lot of doubt that goes on in motherhood, and so when you're writing about these topics that are opening up vulnerability for readers, and you want them to end that 10-page chapter on a positive note. And so my editor really encouraged me. She said, Claire, you've got to find a way, because this is such good stuff, but let's help the reader at the end of these chapters feel lifted, encouraged, and inspired. And so I went for a long walk and I did some meditation, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's it. Like, I'm going to end the chapter with these little, almost like hugs to the reader. Like, you're going to be okay. And let me give you some perspective, and you're doing hard work, and you're going to feel encouraged reading it. So that's the thriving mama reflection. And that's probably the favorite part of the book. Like, I've found myself going back and reading them when I'm having a particular intense day. And I'm like, oh, that makes me feel better. you know?
I know when people are writing a book, they often tell you to have one specific person in mind. Did you do that while writing, and did that help you write?
It sure did. That's a great way to really personalize your writing. And I think I did that. I would think about certain experiences in the therapy room, and I would think about certain things, conversations with friends or family members. And so I would really immerse myself in that experience and imagine it, or myself. Like, how did it feel when you moved to a new area? And, I'd grown up in the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia area. And when our daughters were, oh my goodness, how old were they? Just shy of turning 4, 3 or 4, we moved to Rhode Island. And it's a very different experience when you move as an adult, than and a mother. It was a very different experience, and we really had to start our whole lives over again. And I remember like thinking through those experiences in my life. Like, when did I feel alone? When did I feel worried? When did I feel scared? So I'd bring that in a compilation and just think of like 1 or 2 experiences, or sometimes sit with it a little longer. So it was definitely like a very in the moment, like if someone's sitting and having a conversation, what would I say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Is this a book you think that dad could help dads as well if they read it?
I do. I really do, because it's interesting. Again, this is why I'm so happy that Page Street Publishing House acquired the book, because to work with an editor and work with the team and have this collaboration was so cool. And writing and being a psychologist can be very isolating and lonely. So one of the things that they shared with me is like, listen, Claire, your writing is needs to be a little more specific to motherhood. So there's many edits and rounds to this book. But I said, okay, because we're really marketing it to moms, and it makes sense because women actually buy something like 85 to 90% of the parenting and self-help books. So, so often what's going to happen is a mother or someone, a female, is going to purchase this book and probably share it with a dad or someone she cares about. And it's really more, the concept is really nurturing. So you can almost think of any type of nurturing this book would be useful for,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
caretaking of children, I believe.
I know there's a lot of rewrites that go into writing a book. Was it first draft really different from what you ended up publishing?
It was. So, again, as a first time author, I had kind of been in my head mentally preparing that from the moment your book is acquired to the bookshelf is usually 18 months to 2 years. Mama, You Are Enough was like 10 months. So that I didn't expect it to be so quick, but I'm so happy that with that process. That being said, I had written a lot of the book. I had, concepts in there. But, this book is it's a great resource, but there were a lot of things cut out of it and really reworked. So how this final version looks, you wouldn't recognize the original manuscript. So there's pieces and concepts, but we've also added a lot of new things that's really, I think, very reader friendly for moms. Do you know what I mean? I wanted moms to pick it up in a moment and not have to overthink or feel overwhelmed. So they could just go to a chapter and read about, feeling worried, and they're going to feel better. They don't have to really, it's kind of segmented in a way that's easy to digest, I think, because a lot of times moms are overwhelmed and have so much going on in their minds that it's hard to focus. I mean, for me, I'm speaking for myself. At the end of the day, or when I'm in a moment, it's hard for me to focus for longer than, sometimes 10 or 15 minutes. I'm falling asleep if I'm reading a book. So I made sure that we constructed the book in a way that mothers could kind of digest this material.
Were there any books that you read to kind of help you with your own writing for this?
Well, there are. I really feel like I consume so many nonfiction books, and I think I love personal stories and biographies, and I love to stay current in my field. So I probably need to break out into some fiction and broaden my genre. But I'm always like staying on top of research and what's helpful and listening to kind of what's out there. But the one book that really influenced me was The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And that was a book that I started. It's a great book for anyone who's an artist or anyone who wants to write. It is just a great, great book. I kind of think of it as a cognitive behavioral book for artists. It's like allowing you to express yourself. So I intentionally, when I wrote this book, it was really interesting. If you look at the back, there's a reference. There's like a list of references, and it's not a lot. And the reason why is I really wanted this book to come from my heart and my mind and my experience. So that there were times I could have gone down that rabbit hole of research, but I was like, wait a minute, I'm presenting my expertise. I'm presenting my perspective. So there was a couple times I needed to kind of be current on some research I wasn't familiar with, like in the chapter of disgust, for example. but the other stuff really comes from my knowledge base and my experience. And I think for me as a writer, it helped me find my voice in an authentic way.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a few questions if anyone would
Sure.
like to ask them here as well. We have one from online that asks, how do I make time for self-care during a pandemic when I have no free time, having children and working and all the other things that go along with being at home right now?
Oh my gosh, I so relate. It's so hard. I mean, I am living through that. So if someone has a really great idea other than what I'm going to share, please jump in and share it with us, because it is a struggle. And when you look at mothers, where mothers are in terms of right now in the pandemic, we are shouldering the mental load already, right? Like women carry the mental load of their family, and the mental load is referred to anything that we do behind the scenes that nobody knows about, right? So it's all those small details, whether it's doctor's appointments, camp forms, notes to the teacher, end of the year gifts, getting distant learning ready, whatever it may be. Mothers carry the mental load, and during the pandemic, it's exploded, because now we're juggling work and kids, and it's just a lot. It's a lot going on. So self-care, number one, has to be creative. And I just want to say quickly, the reason why I say that it's important to share with the people in your life who support you, the other adults, to tell them, listen, this is not a competition. We all do our part, right? I may need you to do more because I'm feeling burnt out. Like I'm on overload. So I think you have to get the supportive adults in your life on board, that you're not complaining, you're not less than, that this is real. Like this is legitimately real stress that mothers are going through. That's very different. Dads are going through stress too. Single moms go through stress in a whole lot different level. And so just talk to those supportive adults, and number one, just reach out and let them know what you're feeling, because I think that is self-care. The second thing that you can do when there's not a lot of time, not a lot of money, not a lot of resources, and the kids are around, is really pay attention to the words, the way you talk to yourself. So self-care, and going back to that self-care wheel that's in the book and you can download on my website for free, is, it's intention. So a lot of times, and you wouldn't know this, right? Like you wouldn't know this unless you either have been in therapy or have a supportive group of friends or family members that talk about this. But the thoughts in our mind are so powerful. And a lot of times they're very negative. There's a lot of an inner critic in our head. And so part of self-care is paying attention to just how are you speaking to yourself, and be gentle and loving and kind. And if there's something that's not working, ask yourself, okay, if a friend was coming to me and saying, this was on my mind, or this was bothering me, or you're not this, or you're failing your kids, or, what would you say to a friend? And often that act of self-care, that compassion that you give to another person, you need to give to yourself. So I think that's an easy one, is just look at your thoughts and take care of them. The second thing you could do during a pandemic is really, really let go of perfection, let go of judging yourself. And what do I mean when I say that? Your kids, if you're, depending where you live, may not have access to, enrichment or camps or any other activities. A lot of them are canceled. Your child may be on electronics more, and because you have to go to work. And so how do you allow yourself to kind of balance that? We're in a pandemic. So if your children are bored, if they're getting a little more screen time, that may need to happen, so you can do the things that you need to do. And then when you're not working, get them outside, go for a walk, do some quality time, talk to them about, what they can do to support you when you're working. I think for the moms who have little itty bitties, it's so much harder. So that's another thing for self-care. And the one part that I find myself talking about over and over in the therapy room is the amount of alcohol that people are drinking. And that is another. So be very intentional about, are you getting sleep? Are you getting out for some sunlight and walk in a socially distanced, safe way? What food are you eating? Are you staying hydrated? If you're on medication, if you've been to a therapist, maybe this is a good time to, re-engage. That's another way of self-care. And a lot of therapists like myself, I'm only doing telehealth right now. And you can find therapists at psychologytoday.com and put in your zip code, and up will come a list of therapists, and you can even put in filters for your insurance. So that's another act of self-care. But going back to the alcohol piece is, alcohol sales have gone up 450, I think 3% back in early April. I don't know what that number is now. But a lot of people are misusing alcohol. So, you want to keep, for females, under 7 servings in a week. For males, under 14. I think even that's a little high. And if you don't feel like yourself, or you feel overwhelmed, reach out to your primary care doctor, your OBGYN, nurse practitioner, get a medical evaluation, because this chronic stress is bringing out a lot of mental health and physical health issues for so many people. So I gave you a lot there. I hope that was helpful.
Is there any routines that you've been enjoying while in quarantine that kind of help you stay motivated?
Yeah, I think it's spending time with my girls. I really love my daughters so much, and I love being around them. And even though it can be really challenging, I think what's helping me stay grounded and connected to them is, planning things out or making time just to connect with them. And the older ones, sometimes they don't want to connect with me, but I think that's been really nice, going for walks or having dinner, together, or, just spending time together, really. There's not much to do, but that's been really helpful. And for me, it's just getting up before my girls, and starting the day by, a little meditation, a little reflection, is really all I have time for right now, because I'm pretty tired, like everyone else.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want readers to kind of take away from once they finish your book and kind of go out into the world with that knowledge?
Yeah, I would love, like, my goal is, if a mother, a father, um, could walk away from this book with more compassion for themselves, more understanding about themselves. It it allows them to parent differently. When we know ourselves, when we know what's triggering our emotions, and we take care of our emotions, we can help our children navigate theirs. And motherhood is emotional. I mean, it's just so emotional, every
Mhm.
stage of development. So that is my hope, is that parents, mothers, feel really like, wow, this is a really good book. I never thought about these emotions that way. I never thought about my shadow emotions that way. There's nothing wrong feeling it. What are we going to do now? And that's something I always say to my daughters. It's kind of this running phrase, is that you're allowed to have your feelings. You're allowed to have your feelings, but what you do with them is your choice. It's not okay to take things out on people. And
Mhm.
so that is my, goal, is that it's okay to say, sometimes mommy is really angry, and I'm just going to take a break for a couple minutes and go do something, and then we'll refocus. So that would be number one. And then number two, just that being a parent is probably the most sacred, beautiful role that can be gifted to someone. And it's not meant to be perfect. It's called, motherhood and parenthood and fatherhood, because it's a journey. And so if you, as a reader, can come away from this book saying, wow, like, I need to bring it down a couple notches. I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to create a perfect childhood. I just need to stay connected and compassionate and loving. That would be my goal for the book, that I hope readers walk
Great.
away with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we have gotten through all the questions, unless anyone has any they would like to put in the chat box there.
Oh, yeah, I can read that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely really important during this time to kind of look at how you're treating yourself during
Mm-hmm.
all this craziness, and definitely use some of those free printables to kind of situate my own life.
Yeah, definitely. Just and really, you could again. It says motherhood on it. That's
Mhm.
where we're marketing the book. You can anyone can use it. You can probably even coach your child through it.
Mm.
It's just that self awareness. A lot of times, I think what this pandemic, 4 months in, has taught me is that there's so much uncertainty right now, and
Mhm.
you know that in and of itself can create an enormous amount of stress. So one of the things I've been just doing, practicing myself, is that if I feel overwhelmed, I'll just say, gosh, I feel overwhelmed, or I feel really sad today, or, okay, what do I need to do to move through that? Do I just need to sit with this sadness? Am I sad because we don't have a vacation? I'm not seeing family and friends. Am I sad because I haven't gotten some fresh air? Like, what do I need to do? And so, um, I think this book is kind of ironically kind of given me a framework on how to move through this pandemic, which is
Mm.
kind of unexpected. Because when I step out of the therapist and teacher role, I'm still a human being. So
Mm.
sometimes I think we can fall into patterns where we don't take care of ourselves. So we get really flooded or overwhelmed with our emotions. So I think, especially now in the pandemic, I'm taking a very short term approach to how I deal with things, just
Mhm.
as a coping strategy, because things change so quickly. Um, that's one part of it. And the other part I'll say, Katie, that was so interesting is the book where's that sweet little book? Oh, right here. So this book, like when I think of this sweet little book, um, this book has been in concept for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And so, the journey of getting a literary agent, Regina Brooks, who's just amazing, and then putting this book out there. And, this book was rejected many, many times. And one of the feedback was, we love Dr. Claire, we like the message, but we really think motherhood needs to be funnier,
Mm.
or nobody's going to want to read a book about all these emotions, right? The shadow. And how ironic that the book is published in a pandemic with all these racial injustices and
Mm.
tension, and bringing things to light. So it's kind of, in my mind, it's like this beautiful moment where this book is really a mirror of, almost like an antidote of what's needed. We
Mhm.
need to look within and heal those parts of ourselves and manage ourselves, if we're going to make this world a better place, and a more loving place, a more accepting place where everyone is treated equally. So it's kind of ironic that this book that people thought was too heavy comes out
Mm.
at the heaviest time that
Yeah.
many of us have lived through.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be another great resource for us to kind of just learn more. And
Thank you.
yeah, well, thank
Thank
you so much
you.
for talking with us.
You're
And
welcome.
yeah, if anyone would like to buy Claire's book, she's giving away some fun notebooks with
Oh
every
yeah.
purchase, up to 5 people, I believe.
Yep,
Um,
yep. And so I'll show you what these notebooks are. So a lot of, as you mentioned, Katie, at some point in when we talk tonight, a lot of what I kind of recommend is journaling. So, there's something really powerful about taking this abstract thought or concept and either speaking it with a supportive person or writing it out. So I had these adorable little journaling notebooks made. I don't know if you can see that. And so for people who, I can't remember how many numbers we're giving. I think we're giving away 5
mhm.
for the first 5 orders. So through the site. So
Yeah, and you can buy the book right there at the blue button. Thank you so much for talking with us.
you're welcome. And thank you everyone for joining. And, please reach out on momswellbeing.com and follow me on Instagram at momswellbeing and Facebook. And I'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts and your reactions. And if you have any questions, and share how this helped. It's just my joy that you guys came tonight.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're
Have a great
welcome. Have a
night.
great night.
Bye.
Bye.